By the early 90s, Japanese car manufacturers had become a dominant force in the world of motorsport. They had great success in Formula 1, rallying and other forms of racing, but one event had eluded them. This was of course the 24 Hours of Lamont, one of the most prestigious and challenging races in motorsport. No Japanese manufacturer had ever won this event, but that all changed in 1991 when Mazda's 787B crossed the line in first place. It not only made it the first Japanese car to do so, but also made it the only rotary-powered vehicle in history to win the event. The 24 Hours of Le Mans has long been regarded as one of the most challenging races in the world to win. It is often regarded as the Grand Prix of endurance and efficiency, and it is one of the longest running motorsports events still going. Compared to fixed distance races such as those seen in Formula 1, endurance racing is a bit different. Rather than deciding the winner based on the minimum time to complete the event, endurance races are won by travelling the greatest distance over a preset amount of time. In the case of Le Mans, drivers and teams are given 24 hours to cover as much distance as possible. This means that multiple drivers are needed to finish the race, as it simply wouldn't be possible for a single person to complete the entire event. As endurance racing is so tough, it has been used by manufacturers to show off their technologies. One of these manufacturers was Mazda, a relatively small company based out of Hiroshima, Japan. During the 1960s, Mazda wanted to set themselves apart from other Japanese automakers. Instead of focusing on regular piston engines, Mazda decided to put their effort behind an engine created by this man, Felix Wankel. His engine was completely different to a conventional piston engine. For a normal 4-stroke engine to produce power, it needs to do 4 things: suck air in, compress that air with a fuel mixture, ignite that mixture with a spark, and finally expel the burnt air fuel mixture out into the exhaust. To do this, conventional engines use pistons and cylinders like this. While a rotary engine works on the same 4-stage basis, it goes about it a different way. This is because there are no cylinders or pistons. Instead, it uses a big rotor that spins. In the single rotor engine, there are 5 main components: the front plate, rotor housing, rotor, rear plate, and the eccentric shaft. The rotor housing features an intake port, spark plugs, and an exhaust port. As the rotor spins, it creates a vacuum over the intake port, causing the air-fuel mixture to be sucked into the chamber. As the rotor continues to spin, it covers the intake port and the air-fuel mixture is compressed. At the equivalent of top dead centre on a normal piston engine, the spark plugs fire, forcing the rotor round further until it reaches the exhaust port. The benefit of this design was that it could be built lighter and more compact than traditional engines, a major plus for small Japanese motor vehicles. To prove that their design was better and more reliable than the competition, Mazda decided to enter one of the most grueling tests in Europe, the 84-hour Marathon de la Route, at the legendary Nürburgring. They used 2 mostly stock Mazda Cosmos that were detuned to improve reliability. For much of the race, the 2 cars ran together in 4th and 5th. However, at the 82nd hour, one car had to retire due to axle damage, while the other managed to come home 4th. This success spurred on Mazda to compete in more motorsport events with rotary-powered cars. Mazda Sports Corner, an independent racing team run by a man called Takayoshi Ohashi, competed in numerous events both in Japan and abroad with rotary-powered vehicles. With continued success in motor racing through private teams in their RX-7 sports car, Mazda saw the potential to go further. In 1983, they brought Mazda Sports Corner back to Hiroshima, where it became known as Mazda Speed. Throughout the 80s, they entered a number of different prototype racing cars into endurance races, including the 24 Hours of Le Mans. These included cars ranging from the 1983 717 to the 1989 767B. For the 1990 endurance racing calendar, Mazda introduced the 787. The design of the car was headed up by this man, Nigel Stroud. Rather than make a completely new design, Stroud decided to use many mechanical elements from the 767B, but with a few notable exceptions. While a new engine featured an almost identical layout to the 13J, it came with a few new features. Mazda added new variable length intakes, 3 spark plugs per rotor instead of 2, carbon fibre apex seals, and more. The result of this was an engine that could produce as much as 900 horsepower. However, Mazda limited this to around 700 to improve reliability. Another modification made was to relocate the radiators. On the 767, these were originally placed beside the cockpit, but for the 787, they were replaced by a single radiator in the nose. Air moved from the front of the car, underneath the bodywork, and through the radiator before exiting in front of the windshield. Side-mounted intakes were also included to assist in rear engine and brake cooling. As with the 767, the new car's monocoque design was manufactured from carbon and Kevlar by a company called Advanced Composite Technology in the UK. When the body was finished, it was sent to Japan for final assembly. The 787 was finished just in time for the second round of the All Japan Sports Prototype Championship at the Fuji Speedway in April. Following the event, the second 787 chassis was completed and the team departed for Europe. Former Le Mans winner Jackie X was hired to prepare the team and the cars for the event. For the 1990 24 Hours of Lamont, Mazda entered 3 cars, 2 being the 787 while the third was an older 767B model. Unfortunately, the 2 787s had to retire from the race, while the third car finished 20th. It was believed that heat from the engine caused both failures on the 787s. Following Le Mans, Mazda returned to Japan and began preparations for the next year. Despite the disappointment of the previous year, Mazda decided to expand their efforts for the 1991 season. 2 cars were entered into the Japan Sports Prototype Championship, while the third car ran in the Sports Car World Championship full-time. They also did something interesting. They put the French Oreca team in charge of their World Championship campaign. This would prove to be pivotal, as they and Jackie X managed to persuade the FISA that the 787B should be allowed to run at 830 kg, instead of the 1000 kg minimum weight limit for other C2 cars. Along with expanding their team, Mazda Speed also worked on a number of improvements for the 787. This updated car was labelled the 787B, and one of the biggest improvements made was to the intake system. In the past, Mazda had developed variable length telescopic intake runners to optimise engine power and torque for varying engine speeds. For the 1991 787B, the system became continuously variable rather than stepped. The result of this change was an increase in torque to 608 Nm. Another major change was that made to the suspension geometry, which now allowed for larger diameter wheels and new carbon ceramic brakes, a first for a Mazda race car. Like the previous year, Mazda started the racing year in Japan. The 787B managed to finish 6th overall at its first event in Suzuka and then 6th again at the 1000 km of Fuji. While the 787B was competing in Japan, an older 787 model was entered in European events to prepare the team for the Mans. For the 1991 race, Mazda entered 3 cars again, 2 787Bs and 1 787. The driver lineup remained much the same as well, but with a few changes. With a new year came a new set of rules. The FISA wanted teams to use new 3.5 litre engines and reserved the first 10 grid places for the fastest cars with them. However, this didn't exactly go according to plan. While teams like Mercedes-Benz and Jaguar built new cars, they had numerous problems with them and had to resort to using older but more reliable Group C cars. The only team that managed to qualify with a new car was Peugeot. Still, 10 3.5 litre cars lined up in the first 10 grid places. This meant that while Mazda's cars qualified 12th, 17th and 24th, they actually started in 19th, 23rd and 30th. With this in mind, and arguably a slower car, Mazda was on the back foot. On the day of the race, team manager Takayoshi Ohashi, usually known for his conservative strategies, instructed the drivers of the bright orange and green number 55 car to go flat out. Him and his engineers had seen how reliable and fuel efficient the new 787B was during testing, so they decided to take a risk. In the early stages of the race, this new flat out strategy paid off. Number 55 made its way up to 3rd place, while the second 787B behind it was 2 laps down. While Mazda's cars were running well, they would need a bit of luck to win the race. The first bit of luck came when the number 31 Mercedes-Benz C11 spun off the track and later pitted with gearbox issues. This put the 787B in 2nd place behind the number 1 C11. Following this, it was a test of fuel economy and reliability. It soon became clear that the Mercedes-Benz was slowing down to preserve its fuel and that Mazda had a chance of victory. At the 22nd hour, number 55 took the lead after the C11 was forced to pit due to mechanical problems. At the last pit stop, Johnny Herbert asked to stay in the car and went on to cross the finish line first. This would make the 787B the first Japanese car and the only rotary powered car to win the event. In total, the number 55 787B completed 362 laps, covering nearly 5,000 kilometers in the process, a new record for the Le Mans circuit. Mazda's other 2 cars, number 18 and number 56, finished 6th and 8th, with Jaguars and a lone Mercedes in the middle. With the conclusion of Le Mans, the winning car was retired from racing, while a new 787B and the number 18 one continued to compete in the Japanese and World Championships. Unfortunately, the 787B could not repeat the success of Le Mans, with a 3rd place finish at the 1,000 kilometers of Fuji being its best result for the rest of the season. By the end of the year, Mazda would come home 4th in the Japanese series and 5th in the World Championship. Due to new rules for the 1992 season, the rotary car could not enter, and it would ultimately be retired from racing. Mazda would compete for one more year with a conventional engine car, but with limited success. They then decided to pull the plug on the sports car program, ending their involvement in endurance racing at Le Mans. Today the 787B is considered to be one of the most iconic race cars to come out of Japan. It will forever be remembered for its surprising result at the famous French circuit and its incredible sound. If you like this video, make sure you give a like and subscribe. We've got more of these videos on the way, so let us know what cars you would like to see covered in the comments below. Additionally, make sure you check out GarageDreams.net. Thanks for watching, see you next time.